Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Oxford Farming Conference Oxford Union Debate. I'm grateful to the officers of the Oxford Union for their permission and support for this evening, and for our sponsors, NFU Mutual Charitable Trust, Savills and Thrings. We're so lucky to be in this place of great debate on a day that farmers and 36 tractors rolled into Oxford to challenge the policies being developed by government. I'm hopeful that tonight's debate will be a little more clear and nuanced than Europop blasted out repeatedly through a tractor air horn. That's a noise that will be ringing in my ears for days. Which brings me to the motion of this evening's debate. This House believes that UK agriculture needs more grazing livestock rather than fewer to be truly sustainable. Professor Jude will propose this and be supported by Rob Havard. Henry Dimbleby will oppose it, supported by Colin Ferguson. As usual, contributions from the floor will be welcome, and there are prizes for the best contribution from a young person, as well as for the most iconic comment and a judge's wildcard. You'll have 2 minutes each, and you'll be dinged off this stage if you're running over. These will be judged by our sponsors and awarded at the end of the debate. The result of the debate will be announced at Christchurch dinner. I'll now hand over to the President of the Oxford Union, Mr. Israel Khan, to take us through the evening's proceedings.
Good evening to the Oxford Union and to this amazing debating chamber and to this amazing conference. As a part of that, what we have the debate for tonight is the motion that this House believes UK agriculture needs more grazing livestock rather than fewer to be truly sustainable. So, to call on my first speakers, each speaker will have 8 minutes. In between, we will also have floor speeches. After the second speaker speaks, we will have floor speeches. What that means is that I will ask if anyone wants to speak either in proposition, i.e. supporting the motion. They can raise their hands, and then I will call on the lucky or the unlucky one to come and speak, and then the same I will do for the side opposition. But before that, it falls upon me to call on the first speaker for the side proposition or the government. So I call on Jude Harper to start the case for the side proposition.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is truly an honour and a pleasure to be here to propose the motion that the UK needs more grazing livestock, not fewer, to be truly sustainable. And I honestly and truly believe this is the case. And for all of us in this industry who all support UK agriculture, I believe it would be catastrophic to cut UK livestock. Now, the Oxford Union was founded in 1823, and in the 202 years since its inception, I would guess that this very chamber has had more than its usual share of, shall we say, cattle manure. And I'm sure that some of you may think that I am actually talking bull cattle manure, and yet I truly believe that cattle manure is a founding point of this argument, because continued cattle manure and grazing livestock are key to the success of our industry going forward in terms of the whole of UK agriculture. We often hear, no farms, no food, no future. Some of you may even have heard that earlier today as the outcome of a protest. But I would take it further than that. I would say no livestock, no soil, no food, no future. So with this in mind, and this may seem rather odd, I'd like to introduce you to a potato. Now, this is no ordinary potato. I am not Dervla Kerwin. This is not an M&S advert. But this is an important potato. This is a potato nourished in soil which was subject to manure from grazing livestock. Now, it's important to note that 93% of UK consumers have a positive image of the humble potato, higher than any other fruit and vegetable. It is crucial that for potatoes and all of our other vegetables and arable crops that we continue to have grazing livestock. Whatever your dietary preferences, whatever your lifestyle, It is key that we continue to have meat, dairy, and fruit and vegetables available to all of us going forwards. Now, UK agriculture was founded on mixed farming centuries ago, and somewhat ironically, with all the scientific knowledge and acumen that we have now, we're actually moving back to mixed farming. Many of you will have heard the term regen, obviously, in the last 2 months, 2 years, 10 years. That is because we are seeing a clear improvement in the 3 pillars of sustainability: economic viability, environmental responsibility, and social acceptability as a consequence of moving back to mixed systems where livestock work in tandem with arable crops, which are altogether so important for our diets and, again, for our industry. If we integrate grazed livestock into arable systems, that has huge positives in terms of soil quality, soil health, enhancing the soil microbiome. Many might say that if we increase grazing livestock, that would lead to some kind of bacchanalian orgy of meat and dairy consumption. But instead, it also allows us to produce more homegrown crops, more vegetables for our growing population to consume. And the supposition that we don't need grazing livestock conveniently ignores the important role of these livestock in the rotation. For example, cutting pesticide use, reducing reliance on inorganic inputs, and cutting anthelmintic use in livestock again, all key for our ecosystems being healthy and sustainable going forwards. If we consider the small, tiny indeed, but mighty dung beetle, now there are many far more qualified than I to talk about dung beetles, but their importance cannot be underestimated in terms of soil structure, soil quality, soil health. It is estimated that dung beetles save UK farmers £367 million per year because of the advantages they have in improving crop yields, improving pasture yields, improving animal growth, and again, cutting reliance on inorganic inputs and anthelmintic drugs. Hugely important. And it's not just about those beetles, it's the knock-on ecosystem consequences. If we look at ground nesting birds, they are entirely reliant on dung beetles. The dung beetle lay their larvae, which are food for those young birds. If we take animals off the land, we obviously have less dung, we have less beetles, and of course the grass begins to grow higher and higher and higher. If you're a ground nesting bird, once that gets over 15 centimetres tall, you can't nest anymore. You fly away for pastures new, as it were. We saw this in Scotland in previous decades, where they saw a significant decrease in ground nesting birds, many of whom are endangered or under threat. So it's crucially important that we keep them going. And our potato here, as I say, has a far lesser chance of growing, thriving, and feeding us without the dung beetles. So perhaps we should just plant trees, for example. But again, for the ground nesting birds, trees mean predators. The ground nesting birds fly away. Now, more grazing livestock doesn't just mean more livestock at any cost. This doesn't mean livestock casually paddling through the car parks of Wigan, for example. You know, this doesn't mean more animals and business as usual. We can have more livestock with the same number of suckler cows, the same number of sheep, if we get better. That doesn't mean becoming more intensive. We can have the same pasture and forage-based grazing systems, but it means doing absolutely everything better. At the moment, we know that on a UK basis, only 80% of suckler cows have a calf every single year. If it was 90%, 92%, 98%, more calves, more animals, more beef, but the same amount of cows, the same land area, vastly more efficient system. In terms of sheep, unfortunately, up to 20% of our lambs still die every single year. If we simply improve that down to 10% or even 5%, we have more livestock, more dung, more beetles, more food for everybody with the same number of mother animals, as it were. A huge improvement in efficiency. So as I say, it isn't about changing system, doing everything better. Better health, better management, better pasture, better welfare, better feeding, better breeding. To coin a phrase, every little helps, as I believe some retailers might say. On a global basis, this means better utilisation of all land, both arable and grazed. We often hear that 75% of land is used for livestock, but that's because we can't use it for anything else. We've got to be better at using that land efficiently to nourish that land, again, for crops and vegetables, but also animals as well. We know that on a feed efficiency basis, it takes 5 times as much arable land to produce a ton of poultry compared to lamb. Grazing livestock are absolutely key to moving forwards. And if we put it into context, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jude, for that wonderful speech. Now, to open the case for the side opposition, I call on Henry Dimbleby.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with some trepidation and a little sadness that I stand here before you opposing the motion. This isn't because I'm worried about getting out of here alive, although I was sitting earlier on today during Anna Taylor's talk when we started talking about pubescent girls and their need for meat. And I did wish I'd left a sealed envelope for my wife, telling her that if I wasn't to appear tomorrow, she might find me at the butcher's waste recovery plant in Cowley. It's not because of that, it's because I love meat. I love meat more than almost anyone I know. For my 45th birthday, again, much to my wife's distress, I went outside and dug up our lawn 3 days before so that I could spit roast a sheep, which I stuffed with beef's testicles, and then fed to the residents of Hackney, who absolutely adored it. My 12-year-old daughter, recently, I had a party and I'd done some teriyaki skewers of heart and liver and kidney. Absolutely delicious. And I saw that my daughter had picked up one of the uncooked trays of these skewers and saw people like a kind of horror movie eating the bloody morsel. And I felt great pleasure because, of course, there is nothing more delicious than liver except for raw liver, as we all know. So what you might ask, what am I doing here? And the answer is that I am standing against extremism, and extremism in the form of the word more. So I agree with almost everything that these two are going to say today. I agree that ruminants can restore fertility. I agree. I love mob grazing. I love the fact that in certain circumstances, when you mob graze, you can have more animals on the same land. I even think that in certain circumstances, you can actually sequester carbon, net of methane emissions, by grazing ruminants. So I'm not going to argue with any of that. I'm just going to talk about two things. What is truly sustainable, and what do we mean by more? We need more. Is this an Oliver Twist, we need more, a poor, famished boy who really does need more? Or is the more we're talking about tonight more in the kind of Veruca salt? More? Yeah, actually, we probably don't need any more. So let me come on first with the sustainability part of that. If you think about what we mean by sustainability of the UK farming system, I think we probably mean, or I certainly think of three things. Setting aside profitability, because without profitable businesses, you're not going to be sustainable. But after that, I would say, to be sustainable, we need food security, we need to protect nature so that we can continue to farm, and we need to protect climate. Now, we can leave aside food security. We know from rationing during the war, when the government actually told farmers to stop farming as many livestock and grow plants to feed people instead, that actually meat, although wonderful and very good for pubescent girls, like my daughter, is not the solution to food security, national food security. So let's look at nature and climate. When we talk about nature and climate, do we need more capital to protect nature and climate? Now, obviously, it would be an extraordinary coincidence if we had enough, if just the amount of beef and sheep we were rearing today was exactly the right amount. So on our starting point, it's pretty likely that we either need a bit less or a bit more. So where is the starting point? Well, on a global level, we slaughter 90 billion animals a year to feed us. They weigh at any one time 20 times as much as all of the wild nature on the planet, and twice as much as all of the humans. And most of those by weight are sheep or cattle. But as Jude says often, we shouldn't be talking about the globe, the UK is special, the UK is different, and indeed it is. You know, we grow a tiny amount of ruminants compared with, you know, India and China and Brazil and the US. But we are, for example, on a carbon basis, we have a lower carbon footprint for our cattle than all but the US of those countries. So let's talk about the UK. Where's the starting position in the UK? Well, the UK uses 85% of its farming land to graze animals or grow food to rear to animals. And that 85% of that land, that is actually twice the size of the UK. We use twice the area of land that we have to feed ourselves. And on a carbon basis, 12% of agriculture today is 12% of our carbon output today is from agriculture. About half of that is from cows and meat. That's predicted to grow by DEFRA to about 50% in 2040, because as the rest of the economy decarbonises, the focus is going to come down much more onto farming. So, you know, that sounds like quite a lot to me, but I did physics as an undergraduate here, actually, or I've never spoken in this chamber, and it's absolutely terrifying. So I did physics as an undergraduate. When we did the food strategy, I was like, okay, so that seems like a lot, but actually, how much do we need? What is enough? Have we got too much? Have we got too little? And we did like a kind of all sorts of scenarios looking at how do you deliver, like a simultaneous equation from the land we have, how do you deliver the food we need? How do you deliver the restoration of nature, the 30 by 30 that Steve Reed was talking about earlier on today? How do you deliver the carbon footprint, carbon that we need? And we are doing that work. We tried to cut it all sorts of different ways, and we could not find a solution that did not require a slight reduction in grazing animals. And this wasn't because of carbon. That wasn't actually the problem. We could have methane suppressants. I can see that working out. This was simply because of land. We do not have enough land in this country to restore nature to the level that we need to restore it to. Now, the difference that you would see based on our calculations with a reduction in meat, and remember, we're not talking about a reduction in meat here today, we're talking about do we need more meat? The difference that we saw, we think you'd still have about 53% of UK farming land would be grazing pastures. So it's not a huge difference. So I asked you to think about, therefore, in what circumstances might we need more grazing animals? Do we need more grazing animals in this country so that our pubescent girls do not get anemia? No, we do not. We have enough meat to feed them. We need to get them to eat it at a time. Do we need more grazing animals in this country to sequester carbon? Because we believe that actually by grazing animals, that is the big way in which we can sequester carbon. No, the science on that is completely, there's tiny areas where you can do that. There's no way that's a solution to climate change. Do we need more grazing animals to restore nature? I love a skylark like the rest of them, but there is a whole bunch of nature that is not on pasture, and actually we need to take some of that pasture away in order to restore nature. So I ask you, with a heavy heart and great sadness, to say maybe we just about have enough and we don't need more, and to walk through the day.
Thank you, Henry, for that speech. We now open the floor to the audience to give some speeches. If you would like to speak in side proposition, you raise your hand, and then if you'd like to speak in side opposition, and I'll ask you, and then you can raise your hand. So anyone would like to speak for side proposition, please raise your hand. Gentleman there. Yes, please come forward. Please, you have to come here and speak on the display box. Are you sure? Okay. I've been told you can speak in this order, so it's fine. You can speak from there.
Thank you. So, Michael Lee, I'm Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Harper Adams University, and I like to support in favour of more grazing livestock. Henry, thank you very much. I look forward to next time going to Leon's and ordering some of those sheep testicles and lamb's liver, and I look forward to seeing more ruminant products on the Leon's menu. If we think about the history and the Neolithic land use of the UK, it was steppes, it was grasslands. The naturalness of the UK and the landmass of the British Isles is grassland. Therefore, we need grazing animals. If you notice, we have lost our natural grazing animals, and we have livestock to replace them, to deliver the land use for the British Isles. Also, we are in a global micronutrient deficiency. We mentioned about iron anemia, but also we need to deliver more beneficial nutrients from animal source foods. And we need the lands that are going to be able to deliver that grassland in a global climate change emergency to deliver those ruminant livestock. That will be the British Isles, it will be other parts of the world, but critically those areas that can grow grassland to deliver those key nutrients. So thank you very much, Henry, but I support Jude.
Thank you for that speech. Would anyone like to speak for side opposition? Gentleman there in the front, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I approach this from two angles. Firstly, as an arable farmer, I view livestock a bit like I view politicians. So I care about what's fed into them, and I care about what comes out of them. I care nothing for the beast in between. Well, of course, the only difference with politicians is that it doesn't matter what quality you feed into them. The shit that comes out is entirely useless. I also come at it from a boffin farm, so I do my own on-farm trials, and it's not so much the livestock, the grazing animals above the soil that I'm interested in, it's the diversity of the living creatures below that I'm most interested in, and it's the soil microbiome that unites us all as farmers, and it's intrinsically linked to the gut microbiome. And we know so little about that. And that's the issue here. So, let me put this to you, dairy farmers. If you knew just a little bit, if you understood just a little bit of what there is to understand about the gut microbiome, don't you think that whole debacle over Bavaria could have been avoided? That's just one technology. Let's look at gene editing and how that's going to influence the soil microbiome. And that's my point. Until we understand what there is to know about the living creatures in our care, and that's all the living creatures, we will continue to be misunderstood by consumers and misrepresented by our politicians. And that's my point. So I urge you to take a pledge, to look into gene editing, to look into Bavaria and all of these new technologies. And once you've got that, then you'll have the authority to say whether we should have more livestock. So for now, go through the no door. Thank you.
Do we have more time for close speeches? Okay, so I look forward to another speaker for side proposition.
Thank you very much. The opposition chose to focus on the word more. I choose to focus on the word grazing. I believe we need more grazing livestock in this country. Any animal can graze, and I think that is the core issue here. I was lucky enough to give a talk to a group of pig farmers about 4 or 5 years ago, and the speaker before me was very much focused on animal rights activists who were breaking into those pig farms to do covert filming of the farming within those, of the operations that were going on within those farms. And when I came on to speak, I said, well, why let people break into your farms? Why not just have CCTV cameras everywhere so you can live stream from the inside of your farms? Who here would be brave enough to live stream from the inside of your pig farm constantly? 5 of an audience of about 60 people put up their hands saying that they would be brave enough and proud enough of their farming system to do that. And quite frankly, I was shocked. The more that we can get animals into the open air, into the eye of the public, places where they can be seen and grazed and looked after, and we can be proud of them, the better this industry will be. Thank you.
Thank you. I look for a final speaker for the side opposition. Anyone? Okay, seeing none, we'll continue to the main debate. To continue the case, or actually to close the case for the side proposition, I call upon Rob Havard.
Thank you very much. Are they wearing leather shoes? I couldn't quite see there. The polluter should pay. Good evening, lords, ladies and gentlemen. I'm an organic beef farmer and a professional ecologist. In nearly 20 years as a professional ecologist, the polluter pays principle has been central to environmental policy, but it seems to be going out of fashion. It's never been easier for powerful lobbies to divert attention away from their activities, to divide people, then provide a suitable scapegoat to take the blame for what they do. The polluter should pay. So who is the polluter? The IPCC recently adjusted the warming potential of methane by a factor of 4 with the GWP star methodology. And over the last 40 years, the number of sheep and cattle in the UK has declined. Now, because methane breaks down in the atmosphere over about 12 years, that means the amount of methane in the atmosphere as a result of our industry is less now than it was 40 years ago. Not only have we not added any net methane to the atmosphere in that time, but we've reduced it. Our grazing animals have not directly caused, UK grazing animals, any net warming in that time. So who has? The polluter should pay. 40% of arable land in this country is used to grow feed for animal consumption, and this is often criticised. That's nearly 2 million hectares. Using EU figures, we can see that a hectare of wheat, the carbon footprint of that, is about the same as a single cow. However, if we take that land and put it to grass, and take 2 hectares of land and put a cow on it, we halve the carbon footprint of that agricultural operation. But those figures are dwarfed by the impact of the soil. On our farm, we've taken arable land and put it into pasture, and over 10 years, we've managed to sequester 70 tonnes of carbon per hectare in that time. The European Commission says that the average, when you convert arable land to pasture land, is 50 tonnes per hectare. Apply that to that nearly 2 million hectares, and we're talking about taking the equivalent of 20 million cars off the road. The polluter should pay, and they should pay us to do that with more cows. The benefits go further. Beef is the original superfood. A Sustainable Food Trust report on research by Professor Michael Lee from Bristol University looked at the carbon emissions based not per kilo, but on the nutrient content of the food. And using these metrics, beef is twice as carbon efficient as intensive chicken. Further research has shown that grass-fed beef is one of the few dietary sources for all 3 of vitamin D, B12 and omega-3s, vital for brain function. I recently saw that Oxford University no longer tops the ranking of the UK universities. Maybe you should put beef back on the menu. We've had lots of statistics tonight. Everything is about carbon. You see, there's money in carbon. There's consultants. There's investors. There's policy wonks. And they're all swarming around carbon like flies round honey. We've got carbon tunnel vision. And we've reduced nature to CO2. But what about nature itself? Let me talk you through one of my wildflower meadows on our farm on a warm summer's day. Over 100 species of grasses and wildflower. Bees buzzing, butterflies flying, crickets humming. Voles providing abundant food for owls and kestrels. Habitat created by grazing cows. As they graze, wagtails bob along, picking dung flies off the cowpats. Swallows and swifts dive around the cattle for sweat flies and horn flies. Then at dusk, the steady hum of a geotrupid dung beetle, about the size of your thumb, zipping past your ear, and seconds later caught by a hunting bat. It's a thriving, pulsing, living ecosystem driven by the cows, something they need and that needs them. Every ounce of carbon they emit was fixed out of the atmosphere by plants prior to being grazed. It's a natural cycle, millions of years old, and we're supposed to believe that this is the problem. It's not. Cows, if we didn't have them, we'd be trying to invent them. It's these ecosystems we need to protect. And while UK grazing livestock were busy over the last 40 years reducing emissions, the amount of herbicides and pesticides used doubled between 1990 and 2021. I'm pretty sure the people that sell those poisons would rather we were talking about cows. The polluter should pay. I put it to you that if we are to protect our ecosystems, our carbon cycle, and our rural communities through family farms, then we will need more cows, not less. And I hope I've made one thing clear today. It's this, that the polluter should pay, but it's not the livestock nor the farms that manage them that should do the paying. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that speech and for that uncalled attack on Oxford University. I think we need the record straight here. For starters, we need to strike that off the record. And more importantly, according to Times Higher Education, Oxford is top on the rank in the 2025. To close the case for side opposition, I call on Colin Ferguson.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your last speaker of the evening. I'm sure you're all excited to get along to Christchurch and fill your mouths full of beef. Or French duck, depending on. Anyway, that joke. I'm a proud dairy farmer from Dumfries and Galloway. As you can tell, Dumfries and Galloway is in Scotland. I didn't just try and win the best trousers of OFC. An area known as the land of milk and honey. Why? Because our warm, mild climate means our green grass grows and grows. It's perfect for grazing livestock. So I realise I'm standing here on this side of the house arguing against more grazing livestock, focus on more, as my esteemed colleague pointed out, might seem as contradictory as a cow advocating for milk oat juice. But bear with me, because I think we can all agree, no matter how much you love cows, there's such a thing as too much of a good thing. Now, I'll leave the big picture stuff to Henry. What I'll say is this. Farming is as much about people as it is about cows. It's about the farmers who work tirelessly to produce food, the communities who support us, and the landscapes we all depend on, even if the government don't think we're working people. And while Mr. Dimbleby may have his book, this, you should all buy it, I've been learning from another book. My daughter Sophie, who you may have seen dotting about the conference, has been learning from Mr. Men on the farm. In one particular story, Mr. Silly had just bought a farm. He'd always wanted to be a farmer. The only problem, Mr. Silly had absolutely no idea how to be a farmer. Not a clue. And to be honest, there are days when most of us farmers feel exactly the same way. Because trust me, no matter how much experience you have, how much fancy equipment you own, you can't guarantee what you won't see on the horizon. And that's what makes me think, do we really need more grazing livestock and more chaos? And if there's one thing I've learned as a dairy farmer, is cows bring chaos. They're unpredictable, stubborn, have an uncanny ability to create havoc at the worst possible moments. Now, from the outside, livestock farming looks like the most serene life imaginable. Rolling hills, happy animals, fresh country air. But let me tell you, behind every picturesque farm photo is a farmer frantically chasing a runaway heifer, fixing a broken fence, or scrubbing the slurry off their boots before the school run. A bit like a swan on a serene lake trying to fight against the current. It's not farming, it's chaos management. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're sitting comfortably, relax. Come join me in a short self-deprecating view into my experiences of managing cows and why I implore you to walk through the no this evening. Now, I'm a family man, so I've brought this back to family. So chaos number one, the men. Let's start with bulls. Now, lads, we all have our needs. But when my trusty bull Winston decided to go hunting for some young ladies in the village, he didn't charm his way in. No, he didn't. Winston was returned home to the farm by the police. And that's the thing with livestock. More cows means more Winstons, and I'm not sure the local constabulary need that. The ladies, the heifers, those unfamiliar with a freshly calved heifer. It's a bit like a teenager leaving home for the first time, full of energy, wild ideas, and a complete disregard for boundaries. One of mine recently decided she was a horse, cleared a 5-bar gate with ease, reached speeds of 30 miles an hour. The last sighting, galloping across the neighbour's silage field, living her best life. If you've never chased livestock at dawn in your pyjamas, you haven't lived, or questioned your career choice. Now, the most important family member, the wife. We've all been courting. When I was courting, my wife would often say, "You smell nice." These days, when she asks, "What's that smell?" it's less of a compliment and a polite way of her saying, "You stink of cow shite. Go for it." The baby. Risky. The baby. Childbirth is another test for any livestock farmer. You know how hard it is to avoid comparing your wife's labour to a calving? Try not to refer to the forceps as a calving jack. Or heaven help me, suggesting she try some other mint to help with breastfeeding. Turns out crossover between cow care and child care is not as appreciated as you might think. The kids, picture this, you're enjoying a rare night away in the big city when your phone buzzes, emotion on your Ring camera. Curious, slightly nervous. You log in to find your stock reenacting Home Alone as a stream of calves charges past the house. And where are those calves heading? For more cake and straw? No, the pansies and the local war memorial. That's what they're after. The father-in-law. My father-in-law keeps sheep. If you ever need a reason not to graze more livestock, sheep are it. Arable farmers always seem to have time for skiing holidays in the Alps. Meanwhile, us livestock farmers, we're over here just skiing through mudslides in our fields trying to rescue a runaway cow. I've even heard of one arable farmer today who said he couldn't decide whether to take his Porsche or Range Rover on the trip. Meanwhile, I'm just wondering if my wellies will survive the week. The staff. Now, milking robots are a game changer, they said. They'll make your life easier, they said. What they didn't say is cows would figure out how to game the system. Mine line up for an extra round of milking like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. And when the robots have had enough, they ring me to complain. It's a bit like a clingy ex. The marriage. Livestock farming isn't a career, it's a lifestyle. It's the only job where you marry, not just a partner, but a herd. In my case, that included a dowry of 30 pygmy goats. Ever been stared at by a goat? It's like they're silently judging your life choices and they never look impressed. Divorce. The livestock always get fed, watered, bedded. The family, not so much. Take Christmas, for example. I was so busy with cows, I forgot to fill the heating oil. Turns out a cold Christmas dinner in a icy house makes for a frosty atmosphere. Neighbours. There's nothing quite like a polite, passive-aggressive phone call from your neighbour saying, "Your cows are on the village bowling green again." You apologise, head over, find them grazing on a perfectly manicured grass while the local pensioners look on in horror. If we're talking about reducing the rural-urban divide, maybe reducing community tensions, perhaps less livestock is the way forward. The siblings now have been kicked, nudged, stood on more times than I care to remember. It's like a full contact sport out there. But there's a special kind of pain that comes from whenever the cow plant her full 600 kilos squarely on your foot. And they don't just step on it, do they? They lean in thinking, if I just rest here for a bit. And if you ever tried to extract your leg from under a cow while maintaining your dignity, well, good luck. It's like being at the bottom of a collapsed scrum with a loose head prop giving you a friendly nudge. So, in closing, let me finish by saying this. I adore my cows. I love my farm. I'm proud of what we do as farmers. But farming isn't about cramming more animals onto the land or turning every field into a cattle traffic jam. It's about balance. It's finding the right number of livestock, the right systems to benefit the land, the people, and the animals themselves. We've all got a Mr. Silly in us dreaming of the perfect farm with the perfect livestock where nothing ever goes wrong. But the reality is farming's messy, it's chaotic, it's full of surprises. And like Winston riding in the back of a police van, a runaway heifer channeling around a racecourse, or a prize cow's mowing down the village green. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. We will go now to the exciting part of this event, that is voting. Oh, there's two more? Oh, okay, sorry. We have changed the format a bit here. Yes, 2 people more from the floor, yes. So, anyone wants to speak in side proposition? Remember that?
Lords, ladies and gentlemen, as a farmer who farms on a floodplain, I would argue that more grazing livestock is not likely but necessary. As that floodplain grows, I cannot continue to be an arable farmer on it. So it will have to be more livestock. So please pray for my knees.
Thank you. I actually look forward to now 2 people which is within side proposition opposition. So to make the closing remarks for side proposition, I will look forward to Jude. No, you do the closing remarks first and then comes the opposition. Yeah.
I apologise, I was told it was the other way around. So, Lords, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's very clear. We need more livestock, not more mother cows or ewes, but just better health, better welfare. Henry talked earlier about land. Let's think about land for poultry, for example, which I believe some restaurants employ, rather than beef. If we look at grazed dairy uses 0.6 hectares of land per tonne of protein. Poultry uses 3 hectares of arable land per tonne of protein. Grazing livestock puts out more human edible protein than it ever consumes. There is no human food competition between grazed livestock, compared to poultry, for example, which consumes twice as much human edible protein as it ever puts out. We heard eloquently earlier about the polluter should pay, and at this time of year we often think longingly of the sunshine, going on holiday. Well, let's think about that in context. If you take a round trip to Lanzarote for your summer holidays, that's going to incur a carbon cost, which would be equal to eating instead 27.4 kilos of pasture-raised beef. To put that in context for you, that's about 1.5 years worth of consumption. It's critical that we look at the big picture, that we don't take a myopic view with negative trade-offs, so we consider all facets of sustainability going forwards. Thank you so much.
I now call upon Henry to close the case for side opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's go with the vote. My partner's excellent jokes. I feel we might be on a losing wicket. By the way, it wasn't lamb's testicles, it was bull's testicles, which I think not only are bigger, but have a much better texture and a slightly better flavour. But I'm afraid to say that whatever we'd like to believe, the proposition did speak a lot of balls. I agree with a lot of what they said. Beef is nutritious, but we have enough nutrition. It's just not in the right places. I agree that it shouldn't just be about carbon. The combination of the two is critical, and that is why we need not more livestock, but maybe just a little bit less. So let's just go through the 3 arguments of why you might need more. We heard you need it so we can grow more fruit and veg. I mean, that just is for the birds. We do not need more manure. And in fact, he hasn't been answered yet, but one of the country's top organic farmers told me today he has taken the ruminants off his farm because he found he could do the job better with legumes. So, and that will, I think, make the news when it comes out. Fantastic and very interesting experiment. The second is carbon. In very limited circumstances, scientifically, you can sequester a bit of carbon on farms, on degraded soils with ruminants. It is tiny compared to the amount of carbon that those lands would sequester if they were set aside for nature. And certainly, there is simply no way that increasing the number of ruminants is going to reduce our carbon footprint. And the final point is nature. And this is where we love skylarks. But this is the key reason why we actually need to reduce ruminants, because we need a little bit more land for nature that isn't on a farm versus nature that is. So as much as you love meat, as much as you love farming, I urge you to vote for my partner's jokes and for their part.
Thank you for closing the speech. We will go now to the voting procedures. The way we vote over here are by oral acclamation. So first, I will say for those who are supporting side proposition, I will call upon you. And when I call upon you, you have to shout aye. And then I will call on those who support the side opposition. When I call upon you, you will shout nay. So those who are supporting the side proposition, please shout aye. Aye. Those who are supporting the side opposition, please shout nay. Nay. It's a 50-50. So in this case, we have to vote through our feet, but that will, in the end, once David does his final proceedings, the way that happens is that those who will be supporting side proposition will walk through the aye side of their door, and those who will be supporting through side opposition will be walking through the nay side of the door. But before we do that, David has some final announcements.
Thank you so much for some excellent speeches, and thank you again to the Oxford Union and to Israel for hosting us this evening. It's been an entertaining debate, tighter than I might have thought. I'd now like to ask our sponsors, Savills, Thrings, and then a few mutual charitable trust to come up and present the 3 prizes. Hopefully you've had a chance to think about those. So just as a reminder, we have the best young contribution, the most iconic comments from the floor, and a judge's wildcard. Completely your choice. Sorry, just while they're making their decisions, in the interest of time, I'll go through the community notes. We were looking at a pretty stiff sprint to get up to Christchurch in time for dinner. Just through to some excellent timekeeping by your chair, we're now at a steady jog. We need to make our way up to Christchurch. There will be some students directing you, but just follow the masses, hopefully. Please can you make sure you fill up the dinner tables from the far end of the room so you can fill up to the door. Dinner will be served at 8:15 sharp, and you'll need to make sure you have your badges with you with a grey dot to show the team on arrival. Are we nearly making a decision on prizes?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Andrew Morris from Springs. I'm very pleased to have had the opportunity to sponsor and support this important event. And thank you to all the speakers and contributors for a very enjoyable evening. Today is my debut at the Oxford Farming Conference, and it's really shown me your commitment and enthusiasm and indefatigable spirit to continue undaunted by climate and political challenge in this very important sector. We're very pleased to be here and very pleased to have the opportunity to present a prize. I've got the easy job for a young contributor, which is going to Sarah Bell.
I've got the most iconic one. We chose Emily Norton for this one. Got a really insightful, slightly different take on it. A very eye-opening experience about the biggest industry. So thank you very much.
So I'm Kieran Valance from Savills, and also very grateful to be here sponsoring tonight's debate. For the bottle that I'm presenting is the wild card, which we've chosen the funniest jokes, which are going to...
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen and everyone. The gallery, just to let you know, your vote will be counted as you come down the stairs. Enter through the door you choose. Don't make a rush for Christchurch and just go through the empty door. No, don't do it. We look forward to seeing you, and thank you once again. Thank you.